Hi, my name's Kathleen. I'm a nurse at Swedish Pediatric Specialty Care.
And I'm Dr. Uma Pisharodi, and we're here today to make something quick and easy and fun that you and your children might enjoy for a breakfast.
Yeah, we're going to be making grain-free bagels, two different types. We have everything bagel and we have cinnamon raisin. These are almond flour and yogurt and egg all bind it together and make a fluffy, delicious, grain-free bagel. So we're going to be using egg white and yogurt together in the dough, and then we're going to brush it with the egg yolk. And then flavor options, there's so many options. You can make a rosemary bagel, a sea salt bagel. I chose cinnamon raisin and gonna serve that with some peanut butter or cream cheese, and then everything bagel, which would be great with cream cheese, maybe some smoked salmon, whatever you want. This is so simple. It takes about 15 minutes to bake.
And the idea here is actually for, on the run in the middle of a busy week, you have pre-made these perhaps on the weekend, and they can be frozen, and then you throw it into the toaster and you have a healthy bagel instead of something more store-bought full of chemicals or additives.
Yeah, they're so simple and so delicious and very fluffy.
And because we're making them with almond flour, this would be suitable for someone who needed to be wheat or gluten-free as well.
Absolutely. So I've whisked together the dry ingredients. This is almond flour, baking soda, and salt.
And how much of each?
I have 3 cups of almond flour. That would make about 5 or 6 bagels, depending on how big you want them. Fun fact, this can also be a dinner roll recipe. If you just don't poke a hole in the middle, you can make that a rosemary roll or whatever you'd like. And then 1 teaspoon of baking soda per recipe, and half a teaspoon of salt. Those are the dry ingredients.
So that was for one batch, which will be about 5 to 6 of one flavor bagel, and then the same ingredients for the other type, because remember we're making everything bagel, which is more of a salty, savory, and then we're making the cinnamon one.
So I'm going to separate the egg white from the egg yolk and whisk it in to the dry ingredients.
I'm glad you did that, because I am not good at breaking eggs.
Oh yeah. This is my trick for separating eggs and yolk. Just use the shell itself. It might take a little practice at first to not get the shell in there, but you'll get it. And then I'm going to whisk that.
So for the one batch, it's 1 egg white, huh?
1 egg white, yep, in the dough, and then we save the yolk for glazing on the top so that our spices can stick together and give it a nice golden sheen.
And this is Greek yogurt, and you're adding how much?
I'm gonna add 1 cup per recipe.
And I'm just gonna give you a little background information. So I bought the yogurt, I bought these ingredients today, and there's yogurt and then there's yogurt. So when you look for yogurt, what we're looking for in terms of quality are, number one, that it is just real food. So if I could turn this over when Kathleen's done and show you the ingredients, it's organic pasteurized whole milk, organic pasteurized non-fat milk, organic cream, and then live cultures. This is important because there are yogurts that have first ingredient, might not even be milk or cream. They have gelatin gums or starches or thickening agents added to them. Of course, then we have all of the flavored yogurt options, and I have seen a similar container, and you have to look whether it's vanilla flavored or artificially flavored. So you really want to go for the real product. And because we know that real fat from real food is not anything that we need to be afraid of, I go for the full milk. We don't need to go for 2% or half, or low fat or skim. I mean, if you want flavor and you want this to be a satisfying recipe for a child to eat this and feel full for their morning, go for the real cream, for the real milk.
Absolutely. It's definitely not about calories, fat, cholesterol. Not at all. This is good for you as long as you recognize that it is real food. So that's 1 cup of yogurt.
per recipe.
Per
right?
recipe, yes.
And most of this is just fun to look at and fun to be creative. And if you have a child who's, I think, anything over the age of maybe 3, 4, 5, they could totally help you with this on a Saturday or Sunday. And then the smell of the bagels cooking here in a second is going to be so tantalizing. You can eat it the same day as we will do today, but then you get this whole batch of perhaps 10 to 12 bagels that you can then store for the week, and every day you can pull out one bagel at a time and toast it, and that's one of the healthiest breakfasts you can give to a kid who wants something starchy or bready or bagely for the morning.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. All right. And then you just stir them together. Thank you.
And this is really mixing easily. It's not taking a lot of strength, so you could again give this task to a child.
Sure could.
As long as they have pretty good hand dexterity, and maybe they'd have to be standing on a stool to get up here and, put their hands into it, or you could put this down on a bench for them. But these are the parts where children would love to, get in there and help and feel like they were part of the creative action.
Absolutely. This is a very forgiving recipe. It's not like a bread dough that would get tough if you overmix it. Not at all. It doesn't really matter what order you mix things in. There's no gluten in it, so it doesn't need to stretch and rise and all the things that gluten does. So we just incorporate that. How about you take the cinnamon raisin recipe? I'm not going to measure, but just going to pour some cinnamon and some raisins.
Right, and I think to myself, what would happen if I put too little cinnamon? You probably wouldn't get that flavor you were looking for, and cinnamon adds sort of a natural sweetness. But if you put too much cinnamon, it would look very brown, and it could burn, I suppose, a little bit. But I don't see a real downside on airing on a little bit extra. And if you really want spice to add some flavor, most spices like cinnamon should be a little on the overside as opposed to on the underside. At least that's my preference. And then how much cinnamon were you saying? Like, this is about half a cup, right?
Yeah, sure, all of them.
And again, after you make this once or twice, you'll figure out, like, did you get enough raisins in those bites of bagel? You feel like you want more, then you'll add more the next time. But I'm thinking about store-bought bagels, and they'll say raisin cinnamon, and they're gonna skim because raisins are a little bit on the expensive side, and so you'll get a whole bagel that might have like little tidbits of raisin. I've never seen a whole raisin in some of those bagels. So whatever we're making here is probably gonna be more, packed with all of these really yummy little nuggets than what we would have bought in the store.
You want more cinnamon? I think so. I think let's get some good color in there.
Okay, yeah, that's good. And when I went to buy the cinnamon too, there's different types of cinnamon, and I have been taught that, the better quality cinnamon, and I might be totally wrong about this, but just to let you know that there are different types, I purposely bought the cinnamon called Ceylon Cinnamon, which comes from Ceylon or Sri Lanka. There are different areas of the world that produce cinnamon, and they each have a different flavor and a benefit, and so just look into that and choose the one you prefer.
Cinnamon has some health benefits too, doesn't it?
Yes, I believe it has some natural properties against high blood sugar. That's all really that I'm aware of.
Yeah, I think it can help reduce blood sugar spikes. So, we're gonna form these into balls, and then you poke a hole in the middle. Simple as that. Then you have a little bagel.
That's fun.
Yeah. Whatever size you want.
I have never made a bagel before. This is really fun.
This is not a typical bagel.
And again, it's for us to eat, so who cares about, if they're perfectly round or...
Exactly.
I think when you make it with your own hand, it just tastes better.
It sure does. They actually do get kind of fluffy. They expand in the oven, so if they don't look super nice before baking, they're gonna come out looking pretty good, actually.
So what are the other flavors we could make?
You could make rosemary, sage, anything you could find at a bagel store. I don't see why you couldn't make this yourself. You could get really creative with spices. You could do different spice mixtures from all around the world. I'm thinking you could make an East African spiced bagel. You could make garam masala bagel. Why not? One tool I don't have is a pastry brush in this kitchen. So I'm going to be glazing the bagels. I'm just gonna use a fork and put the yolk over it. It's not gonna be as good as me at home with my pastry brush, but we do what we have to.
Yeah, and if you don't have every tool, you don't need it.
You don't need it.
There's a few simple tools that everybody should have in their kitchen, and probably we should do a class on that.
Yeah.
And the rest you can just sort of wing it.
Sure can. The yolk is going to help the everything bagel seasoning stick to the bagel.
And I know that if I have a regular like store-bought bagel, a lot of the times it's so delicious in that moment, but it's the kind of processed food, high in refined starch and sometimes added sugars, that actually is gonna spike my insulin, and about 30 minutes later I'm gonna feel down because my glucose is gonna have dropped.
Yeah.
And then I'm actually gonna crave another bagel. And so I used to be like, I could eat a quarter bagel, that became a half bagel, then I started eating a whole bagel. Pretty soon I wanted 2 bagels for breakfast, and that's my guess on why something like this with almond flour, which has got a lower glycemic load, is gonna do better for children to be more satisfied and satiated.
I'm telling you, I cannot eat 2 of these at all. They are so filling and delicious and satisfying. You will feel too full if you eat a few of these.
Which I don't think was the case for me when I was eating store-bought bagels.
Right? They're not like addicting, because sugar is an addictive substance, and these are free of sugar. Okay. So I'm just going to sprinkle the ones without cinnamon raisin with the everything bagel seasoning. I like a lot because it's super good. This is from Trader Joe's.
I agree. I think the more the seasoning on anything, the better.
Yes.
There is a little bit of salt, I think, in this,
Mhm.
but the amount we're sprinkling here isn't going to make it super salty. I forgot, was there salt in the dough?
Yes. There's salt in the dough.
And right, there's no sugar in these bagels. Plus, there's very little, refined starch. There's almond flour. And so you're not going to get that insulin spike or that hypoglycemia, which happens reactively to the hyperinsulinemia. And the raisins are really the only thing that's going to add some sweetness to the raisin cinnamon ones. And we're not adding tons of raisins. And the cinnamon, I think, brings out the sweetness too.
It sure does. Okay.
So what's the setting on the oven?
375. I'm gonna check those in about 15 minutes. You don't need to do anything. You don't need to flip them. You don't need to rotate the pan really. This is a convection oven, so it's gonna heat very evenly.
Okay.
This is what they'll look like when they're ready. They should be golden brown. Let them cool a little bit to let them finish cooking. And I like to split them in half and either put them under the broiler for like 2 minutes or less, or in a toaster oven. If you put them in a conventional toaster, they don't have the gluten to bind everything together, so they might crumble, but they'll be so good with cream cheese, peanut butter, whatever you want. Enjoy.